Alright, so now we're going to work on the stick shift for this. I come into Maya, I set my project. Car center divider Sarcona. I go to open. I click my latest one, which is this one. It's called testing. And there it is. Okay, so this is where we left off last time. And just to show you how this is going to look when it renders, I'm just going to click this. And I've upped my settings, and you can see how long it's taking for this to render. But our holes in this should be pretty much a minimum. Okay, if you hit your render button, you probably get a bunch of holes, but you see it doesn't look like there's any holes on this thing at all. So that's our goal in this, is to maintain that. All right, so we're not at that stage yet in yours, but in mine, I just wanted to show you, just so you don't start freaking out. All right, so we're going to do the stick shift, and it's going to look like this. Okay, I like this leathery kind of stick shift here, but obviously you could, not on this project, but type in the right word. There's other kinds of stick shifts that if you wanted to at a later date come in and have a fancier stick shift or a different kind of stick shift, it's easy to replace. Okay, something like that. I like the leather one just because it gives us a different feel to this, where everything's kind of mechanical and cut and precise. Then we have this leathery bag type thing, so I like that. So we're gonna go with this thing, and you can see the first thing that we do in all of these is cut it out. All right, so I just kind of have to get this cut out in here where I want to put that. So again, we go back to our NURBS circle, not circle. We go back to our NURBS square, not circle. And I'm going to go to the top view and just line this up, where I want the stick shift to be. And I think I'm looking at this, and obviously this one is rectangular, so I'm going to create mine a bit rectangular. And this one's a little bit more tapered here, so obviously we have some playroom in this, but I want to just keep an eye on that scale, because I could make this big and it'll look ridiculous. Okay, so maybe something like that would work. Now I'm looking at also, not that, I'm looking at also this area here, not necessarily this bag area. I'm looking at where we're going to be cutting that area. All right, and I'm also looking at this saying, okay, well, I'm going to put a little drawer in here eventually, so maybe I'll pull this back a little bit so I have room for that little drawer. All right, so that'll work. So then we have to do our fillets, keep these things nice and round. If we don't do fillets, what happens is the bevels that we put on the inside won't work. So we have to have fillets. So maybe like that. I think maybe in this case we might want to go a little bit higher in this, like 0.5. You can see how round this is right here. So I'm just trying to mimic some of those details. Okay, so now that we have this, let me delete the history on it. And we'll go to Edit Curves, Attach Curve Option Box, Connect, keep originals off, Attach, wonderful, delete the history on it, and then move it up and delete those extra pieces. Okay. So now let's go and project this. Click this, shift click that, go to our top view, and say Edit NURBS, Project Curve on Surface, Active View, Whammo, done. And I'll delete the history. I'll grab this curve, drop it on my curves layer. Okay, so now I'm ready to trim this piece out. So let's go to Edit NURBS, Trim Surface, or Trim Tool. I want to keep this area. See how everything's still highlighted here. Sometimes what you can do before you get into breaking this surface into all of these pieces is that we could have separate pieces for each one of these, and sometimes you'll get cleaner results just because you're kind of focusing your detail in one area. But in this case, we're not going to, we shouldn't really have an issue with it. Okay, so here we have our hole. Now I'm going to show a different way to do this, just because I think it's important to learn multiple ways, because sometimes, like we've seen before, things don't always work out the way we want them to. So I'm going to go to Trim Edge and click there, and I got the entire trim edge, which is what I want. Edit Curves, Duplicate Surface Curves. Okay, so now I have that trim edge. I'm going to delete the history on it. And then I'm going to go to Edit Curves, Offset Curve. And I'm just going to say Geometry Average. This offset distance is probably going to be too high, but we'll adjust it. So Offset. And you can see it's too high because we're like intersecting this. So if I just come to the distance in the channel box and set this to 0.2 maybe, let's go in the top view and take a look. I just want to make sure that the corners aren't getting weird. Alright, that looks good. I want to check perspective and just make sure that we're still maintaining that bowing that I had, and I am. Okay, so now if I grab the two curves, and it might be a little tricky to select it. There we go. And I loft between them. I basically just created a filler piece. Okay. So all that piece that is doing is just kind of like filling in that area. If I go to my surface selection off, I grab the curves, assign them to this. We shouldn't really see a difference, except for our gaps here. We shouldn't really see a difference in the two surfaces, and I don't see a difference in the two surfaces. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this offset, or this loft, and I'm just going to come into my options and just make sure that I have about 4 spans in this thing. Okay, that'll give me, here's 1 span, and here's 4 spans. It gives me more spans along this. And it looks like I have something weird, maybe it's just angle. Okay, probably just angle. So I'm going to go to Hull now, right click and go to Hull on that loft, and I want to grab these 3 hulls. Okay, I want to leave these 3 alone, and I'm going to move these 3 here. So I'm just going to grab them and push them down. And if I go hit 5 to shade it, go back to object mode, you can see how I've created a transition from here into there. Okay. Now I'm just cranking up these settings just so I can verify that, it actually is reading it as connecting, and it is. Okay, so that should be good. Okay, so I just created just that little gap there. All right, and I could also take this hull here, these 3 hulls that I have, and I could scale them into and create more of this like tapering kind of look. Okay, so lots of different ways that we can manipulate these kinds of surfaces to get what we're after. I could even grab that other hull that we had right here. Okay, remember I have these 3 there, 1, 2, 3, and then I had this extra one which is like the middle one, and then I had these 3 that I moved. So I'm going to take that middle guy and I can scale him down, and I could even push him up a little bit. And you'll see that we get this like little pocket type thing of where that gear shift is going to sit. And just to show you, we can even add more detail to this. If I went into isoparms and just added a couple divisions here, edit NURBS, insert isoparms, between selection 3. I'm going to go to hull. I'm going to click on, let's say the middle guy, and just push it down. Okay, I think it wants me to delete the history first. I don't know why, but it does. Let me go back to hull. And just like before, we want to make sure that we're saving often. There we go. So now we've created just a little groove in there, just another little piece of stylishness. Now looking at this too, this is kind of like, here's the plastic part and it kind of dips down. We could also have this as a metal piece that's kind of sitting on top of a hole. That it wouldn't necessarily need to be flush and fitting into it. So there's that option as well. Okay, so even if this doesn't fit perfectly in here, I could always adjust these vertices. Like I'll show if I just grab this and push that down and scale this. Oops, let me center pivot it. Scale it up a little bit and move it up. That now it looks like we have this thing that's just kind of sitting on the surface, as opposed to something that is part of the surface. Okay, and this would be, let's say this is wood, like this one's kind of wood texture, or it's plastic, and then this would be metal. Okay, so it's a good way to kind of show it off. So feel free to kind of go through and play with this surface to kind of get something that looks kind of neat and interesting. Here's a couple different ways that you could do that. All right, so then what I'm going to do is we need to create the actual rubbery part of this, or the leathery part of this. So we're going to do this a little bit differently too. Instead of duplicating the curve off of here, we're going to start with a NURB circle. There he is. And we're going to go to the top view. And we're going to try to shape this circle like this shape here. Okay, roughly. In order to do that, we need to have more divisions. So I'm going to come over here to my Make NURB circle. And I think 16 should do good. If I right click and go to Control Vertex, that should be good. All right. So I'm going to scale this up. Go to Control Vertex. And then what I want to do is, essentially these guys are going to be my corners. Right there. So if you look, I have 1, 2, 3, a point, 1, 2, 3, a point, 1, 2, 3, a point. Okay. So I'm just going to scale these out to where the corners would be. Then I'm going to grab the next couple. And I'm going to scale them out this way. And I'm going to scale them out that way. I'm going to grab these guys. And I'm going to scale them out this way. And scale them out that way. And grab these guys. Okay, so you can see where we're going with this, trying to get this shape. I'm just moving these into position and just scaling these until we get roughly that shape. And you can see how close we are to getting that shape just by using a circle. And this is a common thing that you could do. Just instead of doing fillets, you could do something like this. Okay, and I'm just going to tighten these up by pulling these over more. Grab these guys and scale these up. Okay, so I think I'm probably pretty good right there. All right, I'm going to scale it down slightly. Okay, so there's that guy. Now I'm going to create another circle. Slide him over. And this one's just going to get 16 divisions. Now I could have duplicated it and just scooted it up originally, but just to show you that we don't have to always do that. Okay, so now I'm just going to rotate this a little bit to get it on the same plane as that one. Okay, I'm going to shift click this guy, and we're just going to go to Surfaces, Loft. Okay, and there is the basic shape of this. I'm going to still come in and tweak some of these points on this original curve. So I can just go to Control Vertex and grab these and just pull them in. There we go. Maybe I'll scale them out a little bit too. There we go. I'll do the same thing on this side just to make sure it fits nice and neat. There are no gaps in this. There we go. So that seems to fit good. Okay, so now what we need to do is just shape this into the shape that we're after. Okay. Now I could also grab this guy and shrink him down or scale him up or whatever I need to get the correct distance here. Now I'm actually going to go with something a little bit smaller, I think, for this. We'll see. Okay. The one that they're showing is probably like this high off of that high off of the thing. Okay. But I like the little bit taller one, I think. Or let's go halfway between. Let's go like that. Okay. So I'm going like that-ish. Oops, I see a little crack right here, so I just want to go in and grab the points. It's not a big deal to do these things after, it just makes it a lot easier to do it now. There you go. Good. Okay. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is just shape this. For real? Alright, we have a hole in the side too. Now look at these things from all angles. Otherwise you miss some of these little details. And this one was actually a little detail. We wouldn't even cared because we wouldn't see it. But there we go. We should be good. Now, yes. Okay. So we're going to shape this thing into giving it this leathery kind of look. So I'm going to right click and go to Hull. And I'm just going to go click on the hull, and I can push this guy down. Grab this hull. maybe. And I'm going to push that down. Okay, I'm actually going to give it a little bit of rotation too. And maybe move it. Because it's kind of like a fabric-y material, there's a lot of stuff that we can do to kind of make it look fabric-y. Okay, I can even go and grab the vertices in here. I can just grab these and pull those up. And I can grab these guys here, and I can push those down and push them in. I can grab this one and just move this guy. Grab this one and move that guy. So you see how I'm just kind of deforming this, and we're just getting this shape that looks a little bit more organic looking. It's just making it look a little bit more like leather, like something that's kind of bunched together. Now the only area I'm not going to play with is going to be if I go to isoparm mode. As you can see that this area here has a double line. If I zoom in, you can see that this one looks a little bit thicker than these ones. Okay, and if I go to control vertex and click, okay, it's not separating. Sometimes it'll actually be a separate piece that will break apart. Okay, so if it is that way, you just don't mess with it. But realistically, we're not even going to see the front. We're going to be back here, so I want to spend most of my time spending detail on this area. I think I'll insert some more isoparms too. I like to have a little bit more detail in here. Edit NURBS, insert isoparms. Let's say 2. And I think I also want to insert some more here to there. And we'll just add some more there to there. And we'll add some more there to there. Okay. So I'm just tweaking the shape and playing with it just to give that look of the leather. Okay. Now one tool that I can use to kind of help me with that is under Edit NURBS. It's a Sculpt Geometry tool. And I go to the option box, and this is going to give me things that I can play with to actually sculpt this like it were clay. So the first thing I need to do is I move my mouse over the area, and I hold B. Okay, and when I hold B, come on. There it goes. You have to click on the window here and then go there. So I hold B, and then it turns to this double arrow. So then I can click and drag, and that's giving me my brush size. Okay. Then I have push, pull, smooth, and then relax, pinch, slide, and erase. Okay. So I'm just going to play with pushing and pulling for now. So I'm going to pull. Now if I leave it at the default settings, it's probably going to pull it a lot. Okay. Let me just reset. Oops. This. So this is going to be the default settings, really, really high. So I'm going to hold down M for maximum displacement. Click and drag, and you can see there's an arrow that will get bigger or smaller, and that's how much it's going to move. Okay. You could also change it right here, maximum displacement. There's also B, like I said, to change the brush size. There's M to change the amount of displacement, and then there's U, click, and then you can pick which one of these you want to do. So I'm clicking and holding, smooth, pinch, pull, relax, erase, slide, push. Okay, so I'm just going to pull. I'm just going to, basically, I'm sculpting what this is looking like. Okay, shrink my brush, get into these finer areas. Now it only works on vertices. So if I go into this area where there's no vertices, it's not going to do anything. Okay, it has to be on a vertice, and that's where the magic happens. Push. I'm going to push this guy down a little bit more. And push that down. Okay. Now I can go under display down here and say show wireframe off. And that way I can still see it as I'm sculpting. So I'm going to push and just smooth this out a little bit more. There we go. Maybe I'll pull a little area out. Sometimes it helps to kind of push a large area and then, or pull a large area and then push a smaller area in, just to help define some of these shapes. If it helps too, if you're having trouble, getting it right, well, create a NURB sphere or a NURBS plane, and just play with the tool on that. There we go. I think that's going to be good. I like the way that looks. Okay, so I just exit the tool by going to the Move tool, and then here is this. Now, if we look at this shape here, you can see how we have these like little lines coming down there. Okay, those are like where the pieces of leather are stitched together. Pieces of leather are stitched together. Kind of rhymes. So I'm going to right click on here and go to isoparm, and I'm going to click at the corners, and that's where I want to basically have those stitch lines. So about there. And if I'm not right on, I could just click and drag and scoot this over so it's right in the center. I can do that as well. So I'm just holding shift and clicking and dragging so I'm right in the center-ish area. Okay, so once I have those, I go to Edit NURBS and I say Detach Surface. Okay, at this point I don't want to edit any of the points on here. Okay, because if I do edit any of the points, you see how we open this up and now I have a big hole. Okay, so what I'm going to do is we need to basically create this little dip inside here. So I'm going to come into these edges and I'm going to insert an isoparm really close like that. Maybe not that close. Like that. Okay, so I'm going to say Edit NURBS, Insert Isoparms, and I'm going to insert, let's start off at 1. Okay, so that should be good there. I'm going to go to the other side of this, click here, there, shift click here, Edit NURBS, Insert Isoparms 1, and there we go. Okay, so now we have basically 6 divisions right here. So what we're going to do is hit F8. I'm going to turn my points off up here and turn on hulls, which is that guy. And this hull in the center, you can see I have this one and this one. Let me highlight these so you can, well, you can't really see them that good. Okay, so I have this purple one here, and this purple one here are basically like mirrors. This one and that one are mirrors, and then there's 2 right in the center. So I'm going to draw a little marquee around that purple line to get the 2. Okay, so right now I have the very connecting edge of all of these. So now what I want to do is move it. So I'm going to go to the Move tool. Now this Move tool is way out here, and it's going to be hard to get at a good angle to push it in. I could double click the Move tool and go to, I'm already on Object, I could try World. That could maybe work. I could go to Local, that might work. But Normal is going to be the one that I want to use. Okay, and what Normal is going to do is it's going to push it in based on the direction that it's facing. So this one's going to push in at a different angle than this point. So as I just push this slightly, you can see how slightly that was. I go back to object mode, click off. You can see that now we have a little line right in the center of that where our 2 materials would be coming together. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing over here. So I'm going to right click and go to isoparm, like that, and insert isoparms. Do the same thing on the side. The hardest part of this is just getting these things to be consistently the same size. Okay, and if they're a little bit off, it's not going to be a big deal. It's just if one is huge, then just undo and fix it. So F8. We're going to go in here and grab the middlest one, which is that guy, and I just marquee it. I make sure I'm in the Move tool. I make sure it's set to this NVU, and I just grab the N and just nudge it slightly in. And then deselect. Good. And this guy. And if I go further with this, just so you can see this too, about there. Marquee the middleest one. Push that in some more. If I go further out, I'll get more of a rounding. It might be a little bit hard to see because of the scale, but I do get more of a rounding happening here where the material is kind of transitioning a little bit looser than this one that's a little bit tighter. Okay, it's kind of like our fillets where we're just transitioning that. Okay, that one's on the other side, so it doesn't really matter. Then isoparm here. Then insert isoparms out there. Insert isoparms. So I grab the middleest one, make sure I'm in normal mode, scoot it in, and there we go. Okay. So that's good. So let's save. And then I'm going to add another thing up here. This is where the stick shift is going to go, and see how it's kind of like puckered in. So I'm just going to, I should have done it before, but it's no big deal. I'm going to hit F8 on all these, switch to isoparm mode. And I'm just going to create an isoparm that's pretty close. Actually, let me do it this way. That way we can get a little more accurate. I'm just going to click this, shift click the top one, and then say edit NURBS, insert isoparms, 3 between them. There we go. And then what I can do is just grab the hulls for all 3 of these on top. There we go. Go to my scale tool, and I'm just going to scale this in a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to grab the next one. Oops. I grabbed the wrong one. See, I grabbed this one. I grabbed the vertical one. Gotta make sure you grab the right one. So scale it down a little bit. Switch back in the move tool to regular object mode. There we go. And I'm going to just grab this last one here and just push that one up. And that should just create a nice little lip on the top of this. Okay, just like that. That's what we want there. Okay, so that bag part is done. So let's go to our surfaces off, grab our curves, hide our curves, gone. Surfaces back on. Okay, so now let's create this little handle part here. And this we're going to create from a cylinder, and then this part we'll create from a sphere. So create NURBS cylinder. And one of the options inside here is whether you want caps. I think by default it's off, but you could actually create caps for it. Okay, so I'm just going to get this kind of centered. I'm just eyeballing it, just getting it roughly positioned. There we go. Okay, then we're going to come in here and add some divisions. I'm going to change the height. If I change the height ratio here, you see how it just gets taller. I could also scale it, doesn't matter. There we go. So something like that. Maybe a little bit higher. A little more height ratio, a little bit bigger here. Okay, we can change the radius a little bit. Lower the height ratio. Okay, and the reason I'm doing it here is I've already scaled these obviously, but I could modify the scales without actually having to modify the scales. But it's fine. It's not going to matter in this case. Alright, so first things, let's go to hull. I'm going to click on these bottom ones and just scale them in. So I'm just going to grab the blue, scale the blue all the way into the middle. See how I grab it and drag it right to the center and let go. Drag it right to the center and let go. Drag it right to the center and let go. Oops, it went to the other side, no big deal. Drag it right to the center and let go. Okay? And then this side too, same bit. And what this is doing is closing it off. That's all it's doing. Okay? And then I'm just going to go to object mode and click on this, and let's do isolate select. That way we can really see what this is doing. So my first thing that I did was close it off. So now it's closed. So then I'm going to grab the next hull out, which is this guy, and I just want to snap it in line with that. So I'm going to hold down V and snap it until it's lined up with that bottom one. Okay? And then looking at this shape, it looks like we're kind of smaller here, and then we get bigger. Okay? But this side is closed off pretty much, kind of like that. Alright? That's where this thing is going to go. Maybe like that. Alright? So we can go in here and I can make this a little bigger there, make this a little bigger there, make that a little bigger there. There we go. That's a quick way to do that. I'm just going to scale these down a little bit more. I want to have a little bit more of a transition. Maybe this guy would come down a little bit more to tighten up this area. Okay, go back to object mode. Let's take a look at that. That looks neat. Let's go back to our other mode. Just shove this down here. You can see where they're coming together. So obviously this is a shorter one than this one would be, because we went with the halfway high one. Okay, that's cool. Let's go insert an isoparm here. And I think 2 will probably be good. I just want to give this a little bit of a dip down. Like that. There you go. Okay, so just create a little bit of a dip right there on those edges, because why that does that. I want to make sure I have this little dip here so I can fit this other piece on top. So create NURBS circle. Not circle, sphere. And as I'm looking at this, I want to use this side here, because this side, if we look at this, this one does have an opening if I spread these apart. Okay, so I don't want to have the opening, so I want to use the closed side. So I'm just going to rotate it like this, 90 degrees or negative 90. I'm going to take my Make NURB sphere and take the sweeps to 180. I'll rotate it a little bit more that way, negative 90 that way. And just position this in here. Scale it down. All right, that looks pretty good. Okay, it matches the profile of this pretty much the way I want it to. It bumps up slightly, which is okay. I think this opening here could probably be a little bit bigger. This one looks like it's pretty much the size of the head. So I'm going to go to Hull and grab all of these hulls here and just scale them out and push them down. Okay. And then I can just grab this and scale that out, push it down a little bit. Okay, and I can adjust that more obviously and go back and forth and tweak that. Another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a, well, I don't need to create a circle. I'm going to grab this. I'm going to isolate it so you can see better what I'm doing. I'm going to right click and go to isoparm and click this isoparm here and just go to surfaces planar. And that's just going to put a cap there. And that's where the little sticker is going to go. And then I said select off. There we go. Okay. So now I have that. All right. Now the other thing that would kind of help this, let me just save this file and open up another file that I have here. And I have lots of stuff going on in the scene. I'm just going to get rid of it so we don't need to see it. Show none, show NURBS, show polygons. Okay. So here is basically what we created in the other one. You see how I added a little bit more detail in the stick shift part here. This one really didn't have that. It just kind of went there. It has this part, but obviously we could add that in, but I didn't, skipped it. Okay. So there's the other part that will be underneath. Here's the other detail part that we could add in here, which is just these little pieces of stitching that would really add to the detail of it. I'm skipping after this just because it's a little bit more setup, a little bit more stuff that we'd have to do. But you see the kind of thing that I've created here. Basically, you know, just exactly what we've already done. Okay. Back to testing. All right, so here's ours. We could add, just like we had in the other one, maybe a little bit more angle to this. So if I go to Control Vertex and marquee it, I just add a little bit of tilt. And that does add a little bit more to it. And then let's grab this guy and just rotate him and scoot him down and push him in. Good. Okay. All right. So now that's done. So now what I'm going to do is just go through the outliner real quick, and I'm just going to delete the history on everything, grab everything, delete the history. I have my stand-ins here. We're kind of done with these stand-ins. We don't need these anymore. Okay. So that's what these guys are, those stand-ins. So I'm going to delete those. And then what I'm going to do is click on these things, see what they are, and then rename them. So this is console face, console side, console fillet. Okay, and then we're getting into the actual pieces. So let's take this and group those, Control G, and rename this console frame. Okay, so you want to go through this and just kind of label your stuff so that it makes more sense. Okay, let me look at this and see what this is. Okay, this is the AC, and this is the AC. So let's group those. AC parts. Now I don't have to name all the individual pieces. I just want to make sure that I have something labeled. So this right here is going to be my radio controls. And basically just whittling it down into, you know, what people can find, how people can easily find your stuff. Okay, all this stuff here is my stick shift. Group that. And it might be easier just to label all this from the bottom. Okay, I'm going to create a curves group, so I'm just going to group those and call them curves. I have a left camera somehow, I'm just going to delete that. I have some blank groups, I can delete those, they're just white. This is part of the stick shift, so I'm just going to middle drag this into the stick shift. More curves, middle drag those into the curves. NURBS square. There's another curve, so I'll just drag this into the curves and delete NURBS square. Middle drag that in there. Here's some more curves. Alright, just drag the curves into the curve group. Okay, and this is my radio parts. So let me grab these, draw radio parts, and probably these buttons too. Yep. Drag them into the radio controls. Here's my radio buttons, drag that into radio controls. Okay, it's all radio parts. All radio parts. All radio parts. All AC parts. And this is just going to help you kind of maintain your sanity when you're trying to select things, especially when we start texturing these. because we're going to have basically a lot of objects. This is a hidden object. Let me see what this is. I just turn the visibility back on. I go to wireframe, hit F. It is nothing, so I'm just going to delete it. Okay. These guys here are air conditioning parts. Oops, that's an air conditioning part. Air conditioning parts. Let's see. This is radio parts. This is air conditioning parts. And then these guys we haven't used yet. But those ones are going to be the slide the AC slider into here. I don't think I want to separate the vents. So I'm just going to come in here and grab the vent parts. And middle drag them out of this. And then group them. And just call that AC vents. Okay, so that's just our AC there. That's AC there. There we go. So I have console frame, AC parts, radio controls, stick shift. Curves. Do I have a curve showing still? I do. Assign all those. And then AC vents. Okay. So then when it comes time to texture all this stuff, what we can do is just say, okay, I'm going to texture the AC. So I click on that. I click that to isolate it. And then I can go in here and just make sure that all the AC stuff is where it needs to be. And I click it off. And I can go and do the rest of it. Okay. Nice and neat. That's how we want to keep all of our stuff nice and neat. Okay. So that's how we do a stick shift, and then the next we'll do this thing. I really don't even need to show that thing because we've done it so many times, but I'll show it anyway. And then we'll do these things, and then that'll be the assignment after, and then we'll have to texture it and light it and whatnot.